Welcome to another episode of the Pineapple Perspective, where we bring you industry experts from all parts of the restaurant and hospitality business to help you upskill, get aware, and learn some new things that you might not know, or reinforce some of the things you might be working on. And today is no exception. We have a wonderful guest, actually, our very first lawyer ever, I think, at least lawyer by trade. There may have been people who were lawyers, but we're practicing other businesses. But today we have Leslie Curran. Leslie, welcome.
Thanks, Troy. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We're going to get into who Leslie is and our relationship, and really get into some meat and potatoes of the conversation where we can bring the audience value. But first, we start every Pineapple Perspective podcast episode with a very rapid fire, right out of the gate question. Leslie, what does hospitality mean to you?
I think in the legal services context, it really goes back to how do you make clients feel like they're valued and how do you make them feel like they've been heard, making sure that their goals are understood, making sure you understand their business and their perspective, and then bringing your legal knowledge to them and meeting them wherever they're at and their evolution of their growth strategy, typically for franchisors, and making sure they can reach the goals that they want to achieve in the long term. But you got to meet them where they're at and make sure they're valued.
So I'm going to make a snide comment about that in a minute, but before I do that, that sounds a little different than a lot of lawyers might answer that question. If I just stop 10 lawyers on the street, regardless of their specialty area of practice, I might get a very different answer. Where does that mindset for you come from?
I think the mindset for me comes because we represent clients that are in a business and we're in a small business as well. So I joined the firm I'm at now in 2008, and we are entrepreneurs. We need the people that are our service providers and vendors to meet us where we're at and to help us achieve our goals in our business. And so as we look at our own business, I feel like we pay that forward or play it forward to clients as well. And I think you need to do that regardless of what service industry you're in. You have to meet your clients where they're at, where they're not going to be clients forever. You're not going to keep them if you don't meet them where they're at and help them achieve their goals.
Yeah, there's one word for your answer. It's called empathy, right? It's just being human and saying, I have the same lived experience and I have to put myself in your shoes. And particularly in the legal side, right? Where things can get a little they're scary up front because you have lack of knowledge and we're trusting in you, and they're scary during if there's contentious relationships or contractual issues between parties. Lawyers tend to be scary, right? But I think if you have a little empathy, you're able to bring some humanity and some level-headedness to the conversation and say, "Look, I get it. This is what's going on, and this is what we're going to do," and walk people through it in a way that isn't so intimidating or high level or so high thinking that we have to use all this language to make you seem like the diploma on the wall was paid for.
I don't keep my diploma on the wall. I keep other things on the wall. But you're exactly right, and I think it really matters to people when you think about what stress they're facing, right? Businesses face stress all the time, and they end up in our office or on the phone with us because there is something that's causing them a stress or a pressure point or something the business needs to figure out or get around or understand. And we need to be able to meet them there and figure out how to help them achieve their goal despite the stress or despite the fresh pressure that they're feeling and facing. And it's possible for all lawyers to do that. But I know it's probably not the common answer that you get from most lawyers. We get really deeply involved in our clients' businesses as well. So I think for some of our clients, they don't have in-house lawyers. So we really do work with business teams pretty closely on a lot of clients. And I think that's a different interaction than most lawyers are used to. I think most lawyers deal with lawyers. And when you deal with business people, you have to understand what's stressing them. Could be a budget, could be some growth. You could have a growth goal for the year. You could have a number of deals you need to get closed. Whatever that pressure point of that stress is the one you have to figure out how to help them solve.
Yeah, yeah. Now that we're giving advice, let's tell the world who you are. Leslie, who are you? Where do you work? What do you do?
Yeah, Leslie Curran, Plave Koch. Our office is in Falls Church, Virginia. We are a small boutique law firm practicing only in the franchise space. We do a little bit of trademark work on the side of that, but we're franchise law firm focusing solely on franchisors. We represent franchisors in regulatory, transactional, litigation, mediation, pretty much everything that touches a brand day to day is what we do. 11 partners in our office. Most of us have over 20 years of experience. I have 25 years of experience in the franchise space, and I do regulatory and transactional work only. I tried litigation for a while, and that was a disaster. I really didn't like it. The confrontational nature and the sort of the pissiness of the back and forth of litigation is not for me. I mean, we touch on it in terms of strategy, planning, when clients end up in litigation, but in terms of the day-to-day, being a litigator and having to deal with that type of work was not something I was interested in. So I'm all regulatory and transactional.
So, full disclosure, Leslie is the lawyer for Pepper Lunch. She's our franchise industry attorney and handles all of our transactions and regulatory and advice. And she lives what she says because I think Leslie's the first lawyer I ever heard respond to a question for me by saying, "Well, that's just a business decision. That's not a legal decision, Troy. What do you want to do? Doesn't matter. You decide."
Figure it out.
Yeah.
W
Yeah.
We gotta get you there.
And then I say, "Well, what do other people do?" And she goes, "Well, I've seen this and I've seen that, and this is my thoughts, but you do what you got to do." And
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
yeah, and my snarky comment from your opening sentences was one way to meet business people where they are and understand where they're coming from is not to charge them $65 for a 5-minute phone call or a single email, which I've had plenty of attorneys do. And I usually say now when I meet an attorney that we're going to engage early on, I say, "Listen, this is meant to be a long-term relationship, right? Let's work something out that makes sense for everybody, but I don't want to be nickel and dimed on every email, phone call." I had a law firm, a lawyer email me check-in emails. "Hey, everything good? Do you need anything?" I was following up on that, and then I got a bill for that email or that phone call, and I'm like, "Do not reach out to me and charge me for your outreach." That's not meeting the business people where they are, and it's not building a long-term sustainable relationship. And you and I have had a really good run at that. I really appreciate your way of doing business, particularly in understanding us. So appreciate that.
That's not meeting your clients where they're at, and I think that's there's lots of things that as a law firm, traditional law firms charge for that we don't charge for, and we set that up for the exact reason that you just said. I'm not gonna have 4 lawyers billing on the same matter. I'm not gonna bill you for travel time or o other things that I think a lot of law firms bill, things that we frankly billed for in our prior firms. We just don't bill for them anymore. It for us, it's just because our firm is set up differently than most traditional law firms, so we're not structured like a typical law firm. We don't have billable hour requirements like we came from. I don't have a required amount I have to bill every year, so I'm not looking at a target and trying to figure out how to meet that target. It's just not part of our
Yeah,
culture.
that makes
So,
sense. Just changing the structure of it, the
yeah,
the the purpose of it. It comes down to customer service, right? It just comes to
yeah,
taking care of your people, right? You bill for the things that are intellectually unique, like or whatever the skills that you have. When you apply your skills, you bill for them, and those skills can be conversations, it can be emails, but not for like a quick whip tick thing here or there. It's just not just doesn't that's part of relationship.
Yeah, Troy, I always think about it as what's my value add? Am I adding value to your business? Am I bringing value to you in some way? Am I teaching you something? Am I explaining something? Am I helping you get through a problem? Are we solving something? Because that's what you care about and that's what you want to pay for. That's the advice and this assistance that you need to grow your own business. And if you're not getting that from me, then there's no value add to what I'm helping you with. So and you're not gonna wanna pay for that service. So
AKA, I get a fair amount of free therapy, is what you're saying.
yeah, exactly.
Some talking off the ledge. Okay, Troy, now that you've vented, let's get down to the simple facts of what do we need to do here. Yeah, got it.
Exactly.
Leslie, let's talk about some things for industry people from small and emerging 3, 5 unit group all the way up to my colleagues in the large franchisor space. What are some of the most common mistakes emerging or new franchisors make? And also then tell us what are some that some of the bigger boys make too, even though they've been around a long time and have lots of franchisees, but maybe get complacent. Give us the landmines. Let's wake people up a little bit and get their attention.
So I think for a smaller emerging brand, some of the mistakes they make, franchising without a clear-cut plan in terms of how they're gonna grow. So do you have a growth strategy? Have you thought about how you're going to support that strategy? Are you going to accept franchisees who are geographically distant from you? And if you do that, how do you manage your supply chain? How do you do that part of it? How do you get them trained? How do you visit them? How do you inspect them? How do you monitor them if they're far away from you? In some brands, when the growth is well thought out and planned and it's in markets that are similar and maybe geographically close, those brands tend to have a better pulse on what's going on or a better eye on their growth. And then if you do have a growth strategy and you've put that out there, do you follow it? Or do you follow the franchisees who come in the door just because they came in the door? And then once those franchisees come in the door, are they qualified? Have you thought about what you need in terms of qualifications for franchisees? And frankly, are they a good fit? I mean, this is it's a personality test. It's like, do I meet you in person and I say, yes, I could do business with you? And I think the biggest problem is understanding that this isn't a, one and done. This is 20 years, 10 years, whatever. It's a long time. And so if you meet someone and you think, maybe I can, it's probably not the right fit. And I think startup brands will tend to at least the first 5 to 10 franchisees. You take the first 5 or 10, even if they don't fit the mold, even if they're not the people you wanted. You bring them in anyway and you think, I'm gonna change them, I'm gonna fix them, I'm gonna make it work somehow. And it just doesn't work. Um, and then I think one of the other ones that is common, especially in brands that are run by founders, is a sort of a lack of self-awareness. Like we're not aware sometimes of our own flaws. And I think in many brands that still have founders at the helm, you see that where the founder's not taking a step back and seeing what are the flaws in the organization. And other people see them, but it's hard to get someone to listen to their own flaws sometimes. And so you do see that a lot in brands, I think, that are run by founders, that they need to take that step back and look at the brand and be objective about the brand and the management of the brand, and maybe bring in third parties to help them when they need that help. And then when they do bring in help, I think that it's something that is really important, is just being involved in this industry that we're a part of. There's specialists that do just about anything you can imagine. Some of them are great at what they do, and some of them are not so great. Some of them are pushy. Some of them have contracts that are aggressive and overly aggressive, and making sure you understand what's in those contracts and in those relationships. And frankly, understanding what service you're getting. Like, you really do have to read the contract and understand what service they're providing, because there's a lot of talk, but that might not be what the contract says about what they're going to provide for you. So I think being very careful and strategic about the contracts you set up when you do those documents and when you ask for help getting the right people.
What do you think established, older, longer, larger franchisors? Is there an air of complacency? Is there an air of arrogance? Is there an air of I know better than you? And I just feel like a lot of bigger, older brands tend to get really, really harsh in their legal side of their interaction with their franchisees. It tends to get contentious. What are your thoughts there? How do we kind of rectify that, or how do we get folks that are coming up in the industry to sort of change that mantra?
I think that's definitely true in a lot of larger brands. It's sort of like take it or leave it situations. I have whatever 3,000 franchisees and everyone but you's going to do it, so you're out. Like, that's sort of their mantra in some respects. I think there is also a lack of transparency in a lot of mature brands, about what the brand is doing and what they're sharing with franchisees. So I think mature brands that do it well, there is transparency. They talk to franchisees through a variety of different vehicles. Maybe it's, councils or committees that franchisees are involved with. It could be an advisory group. They might do road shows or call-ins where you get to talk to different C-level and, staff people at the company. They do their brand conferences, and those brand conferences they're open, and there's legitimate discussions around topics that are typically contentious. Maybe it's, how are unit level economics doing, in the restaurant space? What's driving food costs? Maybe they'll open up one of those sessions and talk about franchisee ideas on, driving down food costs. I mean, there's ways that brands do it well. The other thing I would say is I think leadership's responsiveness to franchisees. I think when the leadership of a brand isn't responsive to complaints that franchisees are bubbling up, And I'm not saying it's like the one-off complaint. I mean, we know when the complaints are coming from a significant number of franchisees that they will need to be addressed because otherwise, to your point, I mean, that contentiousness is gonna lead to something much bigger, typically a lawsuit by a group of franchisees is coming. And maybe the formation of independent franchisee associations, or things like that, that can typically tear a brand sort of apart because you're focusing effort and energy then not on building brand culture and building support for franchisees and building restaurant level economics. You're tearing it apart and you're spending your time and money on things that aren't building the brand or aren't growing the brand. So I think really that lack of transparency and lack of input from the franchisees is probably where you see mature brands sort of struggling a little bit more. And then I think the other piece is mature brands that get complacent in how their units look, that don't upgrade and don't stay, they sort of don't keep up with things. They trade on the value and the name recognition that they have without thinking about the customer experience coming in. And so if you're not, staying relevant and keeping your brand relevant to the customer, I think that's another problem. And we've seen it over the years where, brands just sort of get lethargic and I think they don't do anything with anything, their trade dress and stuff like that. And I mean, you walk in and you're like, "Ooh, this is like circa 25 years ago. Something needs to change here." And brands have tried to redo that, and some of them have failed after, they haven't upgraded or done upkeep on their images. So I mean, I think that's another big problem for mature folks.
Yeah, for sure. Leslie, I know you do a lot of restaurant brands like us, but your firm is in the franchising industry at large. And so, can you share any thoughts or introspections or insights from other industries in the franchising space? And maybe since most of my audience is restaurant related, sort of catch us up. Like I always like to go to one or so conferences a year. I usually go to IFA, which is a mixed industry, just franchising general, but also I'll end up at, real estate ones or bank. I went to a banking one that they wanted restaurant to do that. So I was the restaurant guy at a banking one, but it was very fascinating when you look at how other industries, other genres of business operate within the franchising framework and how maybe they adopt things faster, move faster, or do things differently. Any lessons or learnings that us over on the restaurant side of franchising could take away from that?
I think in some other spaces, they adopt technology faster than restaurants do. I think you see technology being used and especially some smaller footprint businesses, technology tends to play a pretty big role for them. And the other thing about that is they tend to also vet it with franchisees a little more readily than a restaurant spaces will do that. So they'll let franchisees test some of that stuff before they roll it. I think in the restaurant space, to the extent that a brand has company-owned restaurants, they're gonna vet it through those. But I think vetting things like that through your franchisees is a little bit more I think it's pretty important. And so, I mean, some restaurants do it really well in terms of, vetting things out and having franchisees help with it. But for some reason, I think franchisees are involved in other concept spaces more so than in the restaurant space, and maybe they're just more readily willing to do that, but I do think that's something that we see outside the restaurant space, testing things.
Yeah, so in the US, I don't have a corporate store. We will in 2026. But even where we have corporate stores, so we own 130 Pepper Lunch corporate stores worldwide. But even when we have those, we also will test small tests with, two or three franchisees, 3 to 5 or 10 stores, and sort of ramp those things up, right? And that could be an LTO, it could be a value promotion, it could be a new dish, it could be certainly new technology or a new business process, et cetera. In the US, we're very fortunate. Our two largest, busiest stores allow us to use them for all kinds of tests and training opportunities. But we also kind of mix that around and say, all right, well, that worked at Irvine with a $3 million store. How's it going to work in the $1.5 million store in another city or state? I agree with you. It's really, really important. And I think, I've always had this mindset around stakeholder buy-in. You got to get all the stakeholders involved and you got to get their perspective. Like, they're going to use it. You're forcing them to use it. You're forcing them to pay for it. Whatever that is. It could be a small wares change. It could be an equipment change. It could be the fact that we're now putting these new wooden replicas of our hot plate with cool backlit sayings on them in the store. Well, those cost $3,000. And so,
Right.
is it really worth it to have this trade dress? Well, we think it is. It lights up the dark corner, and it's a visual entity across the room and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think you're right. We've got to have a relationship with our franchisees that allows us to test and allows them to give the feedback. And like you said, if they have a chance to bring their voice to the table, everybody's going to be better for it, and you're going to likely have a better relationship and have easier opportunity to get them to adopt things as well as you move forward.
Absolutely.
So, Leslie, we try to keep these around 30-35 minutes. We've got a few minutes left. Tell us a little bit about your practice. You introduced it, but talk a little bit about some of the things you see and you're trying to help people avoid when they first call you. Well, just give us a little education on how you're different in this space. And, if you want to make it an infomercial, great. But generally, tell us what's different and how you can help folks in the restaurant and or broader franchise industry.
Yeah, sure. I think what's different about the way that I practice is I don't necessarily have a specific way that everything gets done. I think the what I need to do is I need to get to know the client. I get to know what you're looking for. So, for example, we work on the FDD documents every year. Most lawyers have a specific way they do those, right? There's only one way, and you're going to do it this way, and I'm going to give you the documents. And I think that every client's a little bit different. I think that we have to figure out what's the best way for the client in terms of the updates that need to be done. Do we give you, one questionnaire? Do I give you sections of the FDD? Do we call on the phone? I have clients that don't want to read anything, so we get on the phone for 2 hours and we literally hammer everything out, and it's an open phone line and everybody dials in at the right time and we go through the pieces of the FDD. I have other clients where they don't want to talk on the phone and it's like, send me 16 attachments and I'm going to get the updates and I'm going to send them all back to you. We have other clients that send me the final FTD and say, all I want you to do is file it, just, or look at the changes. And so that's the thing, I think, to the point of it's not a one size fits all relationship. It is a very personal relationship with the client about what they need. And then on the transactional work that we do, it's the same thing. It's, what do you need? What do you need for support? And each client needs something slightly different because, you don't all have the same in-house resources. And part of the other piece of it is I think education is really important. So teaching clients what the laws are and helping them understand the laws and then train their internal teams to the extent that you can bring someone on board to do parts of the legal work, training those people and making sure that they're up to speed. I don't always have to do the same work for a client. It changes over time. So you may bring someone on board that can do part of what I do. And that's great because I feel like there'll be something else that I can help you with as long as I'm helpful to you and I'm meeting you and helping you meet your own goals, then there's going to be work for me to do and it might morph and it might be something different, but that's fine. I mean, that's all totally fine.
Yeah, and here we come. The end of the year is here. There's going to be some introspection on our part and looking at the FTE and are the numbers right? Do we need to
Yeah.
change some numbers? Do we need to change some parameters? Those franchisees read the document and they'll say, you did 13 days of training, not 14 days of
Oh,
training.
yeah.
Where's my day? So,
Exactly.
yeah, you've got to be specific about what you're trying to offer. And like you said, as your business changes or as you learn about the relationship and what the needs are, you might need to add or change what you're offering and how you're offering it. So I'm excited though. I mean, it's the new part, it's the new thing. We get to look at it every year and then we just wait for the audits to get done and file it finally. But
Yeah.
yeah, look, there's a lot. There's so much out there. I mean, the exemption rules, what states have, don't have, registration, notification. There's just so much to it, and it changes, right? And every state has their own schedule for when it and how it addresses these things. So
When you talk about that too, I think, the one piece about franchise lawyers in general too is the exemptions, about them, and we talk about them. A lot of brands don't even look at the exemption rules. Like, they don't consider them, they ought to, because when you're dealing with large franchisees and multi-unit operators, in the states that have exemptions, it's likely that they'll meet an exemption. And then, as it reduces your overall compliance costs because you don't need to provide the FTD to them if they're exempt, and so it's tricky, and the laws are different from state to state, but, it can reduce your costs, and it can make your deals be able to close quicker. I mean, there's no hold periods if some of those exemptions apply. So I think that's a really important thing to look at and to make sure if you're working with a franchise, work with a franchise lawyer who knows what they're doing and knows the
That was my
rules.
next comment, actually. I've been waiting to bring it up. Make sure I tell all of my franchisees, I mean, even if they're you wouldn't even believe it. You know, if you're an existing multi-unit, maybe multi-brand franchisee, but you might not have bought your franchise for 5, 7, 10, 15 years. You might have been operating one or more brands for umpty who knows? Even if it's 3 or 5 years, you may not have retained that relationship with your franchise attorney because as a franchisee, you may not need a franchise attorney on a regular basis
Right.
like a franchisor does. And so I'm adamant, A, they have to be a franchise attorney specialist. Great if they happen to have experience in the restaurant part of franchising. And if you need a referral, I call Leslie all the time. Hey, Leslie, I've got somebody, they need somebody in this state. Can you please make a recommendation? Because I want Leslie to recommend somebody that she knows is a good attorney that is going to do
Yes.
things the right way and not make up a bunch of huff and puff and BS and waste a bunch of time with silly requests or requirements and but has an understanding of this business. So yes, please, for gosh sakes, get a franchise attorney that is good and knows what they do, and that's really hard sometimes to figure out.
It's hard, and I think for franchisees who are coming on board, they typically have their whatever, their wills, the person who wrote their will or drafted
Definitely
their
don't
real
do
estate
that.
contract. Oh,
Definitely don't do
yeah,
that.
and right, and so that person's gonna get the franchise documents, they're gonna line edit them, and they're gonna come back to us, we're gonna be like, "No, thank you, we're not even gonna look at that," which was the problem, you just wasted everybody's time. That's unfortunate,
There's a lot of
so
unique stuff in the franchising documents and agreements for sure. And structures, right? Are you doing multi-unit development agreements? Are they paying for the territory rights? Are they paying for the individual stores? There's a lot there. And those are business decisions that have to get made. And sometimes they have to change. And you need to take the lessons and learnings and get the advice of your franchise attorney to help you pivot and move.
for sure.
Well, Leslie, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm grateful for you on a daily basis in our day-to-day business transactions, but also very grateful
It was much quicker than I expected.
yeah, it goes by fast when you're having a lovely chat.
Yes, it was fast.
Um, but yeah, I really appreciate you being willing to come on and share with the broader audience just so they can get some understanding and hopefully some enlightenment and maybe some encouragement to look a little deeper and take this franchising legal side a lot more serious. I mean, we see emerging brands and like you said, founders, boy, sometimes they try to skip steps or save money or it's going to bite you in the butt. It's going to bite you in the butt when your franchisees know more than you, or they have a better lawyer than you, or you just didn't do a lot of things you should have done, or you didn't understand a lot of things you did or decisions you made, and your attorney maybe didn't push you to learn those things. I can tell you, Leslie and her team make sure we understand what we're deciding and why we are doing things we're doing. So I'd encourage everybody to look down that road. Leslie, how do people find you? Plave Cook.
How do they find me? They can check us out on our website, plavecook.com. You can get my information from Troy because he's always got it handy.
We will put it in the show notes. We'll put it in the description. We'll put it in the comments of all the postings. We'll make it easy, one touch, easy to find.
Or I'll see you guys at trade shows and conferences. We're out all the time. Our team's always out, whether it's IFA or ABA or other trade shows. We do restaurant finance, and that's one of my favorite ones to go to. So, and I do emerging franchisor conference for IFA and certain of the other ones. So, happy to connect with anyone, especially if you're a founder or startup brand that is just looking for a sounding board. I'm here. I'm happy to answer questions. No charge for that. First advice from me, I'm happy. I don't want a founder or a new brand to be in a bad place, and I think brands get there very quickly
Yeah.
in making some legal decisions that are not very good. So
Yeah.
if I
Awesome.
can help, I'm happy to do it.
Thanks, Leslie. We appreciate you.
Sure thing.
Thank you for listening to The Pineapple Perspective. If you loved today's episode, leave a review and a 5-star rating. I look forward to welcoming you back next time.